welcome to the talk, UFOSINT, Open Source Intelligence and Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. My name's Isaac Basque-Rice, and I guess we'll just start on a little bit of information about myself. So, I'm Isaac, as I said. I'm a fourth-year ethical hacker. I'm originally from Liverpool, so that could come out of my accent. Please just, if you need to, tell me to slow down. I'm really interested in threat intelligence, and specifically where that meets OSINT. Research is something that I really like doing, so this was actually really fun to make. My dissertation is on video game anti-cheat and security therein. Yeah, I'll do a talk next year and come back if there's any interest in that. That's my Twitter @ and I used to be a pretty weird kid. So as a child, I spent a lot of time with my nan watching documentaries on the History Channel and Discovery and that kind of thing, including unsolved mysteries and UFO conspiracies. I was a pretty anxious kid, and these conspiracies scared me quite a lot. This talk is heavily influenced by that childhood anxiety. But as I grew up, I realised that ancient aliens and other conspiracies are pretty much just a cope for people without common sense and for, who have a desire for things to be a little bit more than they've seen. Occam's razor tells us that the simplest explanation is usually correct, and that is definitely heavily informed this talk as well. Understanding this reality has really helped reduce my anxiety over the years, but with that said, the fascination that I've had with UFOs still remains, but with a little bit more of a skeptical view attached to it. So let's start with what UFOs actually are. The various governments of the world prefer the term unidentified aerial phenomena because they're both more accurate. Not all UFOs are objects, and there's also less stigma. No need to talk about little green men when you're giving a report about UFOs if you're a fighter pilot, for example. They're basically what they say on the tin, though. A bird could be a UFO if you've lived in a cave and never seen a bird before. So in this talk, I'll be going over examples of UAPs caught in images and on video, and I'll be aiming to provide a logical, rational explanation using some pretty simple OSINT techniques, to be honest. I think, honestly, the explanation is often good, or just as good, as I should say, as the lack of an explanation. And I promise that's not like when someone says that store brand cola is just as good as Pepsi. I actually mean this. If we have time at the end as well, I might go over one particularly compelling case for which there isn't really a rational explanation at the minute. But there might just be one question on your mind at this point. Who cares, right? Why does it matter? UFOs are weird, but ultimately probably pretty harmless phenomenon that we can all get a bit of a laugh and a bit of a joke out of. What's the point in ruining all the fun and debunking them like this? Well, the US military almost definitely cares. If something's flying in their airspace without permission and can't be determined, well, that's a breach, baby. The absolute last thing that the US needs is a foreign drone or balloon in their backyard. Recently, the US Department of Defense announced the establishment of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, of which the UAP task force, the lovely logo of which, well, I'm not sure if it actually is the logo, whatever, is on screen at the moment. So just a quick note before I continue. I'll be talking a lot about the US and the US government in relation to UAPs, and this is for a few reasons. Think of one alien movie where the US, or a stand-in for the US, isn't the primary protagonist or antagonist. You just can't. It's really difficult. You also won't often hear of Russia or China suffering a cyber attack, for example. Not that it doesn't happen, just because they're not willing to admit it, and it's the same with UFOs. The US government also has an annual report into UAP sightings in the previous year. They commissioned a Project Blue Book in 1952, which was a government registry of sightings that ran up until 1969. So let me just give a really quick example of when it's not a military threat and it's a genuine, threat to human safety. You may know of the original War of the Worlds incident when Orson Welles broadcast a radio play version of the book and people thought it was real. Panic ensued, everyone, crying and throwing up and stuff. Well, a Spanish language version was actually broadcast on Radio Quito. The same thing happened again, got a little bit more out of hand though. People realized it was fake, they rioted, they burned down the building holding Radio Quito, which killed 7 people. The firefighters were off dealing with the non-existent UFOs at the time, so they weren't able to respond properly. It's a horrible incident, and I think this really illustrates how important debunking UFOs is. But how do you actually do that? So in this section, I'll go over a few common mistakes people make when they think that what they're seeing is a UFO. So the first thing that it could be are camera artifacts. These are in-camera or around-camera effects. Examples that I'm given here are bokeh, which I'll explain in a bit, black dots, which happen when some camera sensors get blown out with light, lens flares, and this is a speck of dust on the lens that is reflecting the light kind of weirdly. Astronomical stuff, anything in space, so the examples I'm giving here are transient lunar phenomenon, which in this case is a comet impacting the moon, a couple of planets, often Venus for some reason, an asteroid, which is a comet that crashes on Earth, and a comet, which is an asteroid that doesn't crash on Earth. This is a personal favourite of mine, atmospheric phenomena, a lot of clouds in here. Watch the movie Nope and you'll get why clouds kind of seem a little bit weird to people. The examples I'm giving here are iridescent clouds, which is when ice crystals reflect light in odd ways. The next one's a Virgo hole. The next one's lenticular clouds, and the last one is St. Elmo's fire, which is a personal favourite of mine. And it happens when metal objects pass through an area of high electrical disturbance, such as a thunderstorm, and begin to radiate plasma. If you're a pilot or know a pilot, they'll probably have seen it at some point. Often explanations can be entirely man-made phenomena, so balloons, lol, light projections onto clouds, rocket launches, which by the way, how cool is that photo, right? And the absolute bane of my existence, Elon Musk and his Starlink project, which is that last image over there. And the final category that it often is nature. So birds often get mistaken for UFOs. There's a video you can find online where a news report in Milwaukee captures a load of UFOs live. Turns out they're just birds at night reflecting light from below weirdly, and there's like trails, but that's high exposure on the camera at nighttime, whatever. The next two images are seed dispersal images and insects, which are both also pretty common. So now let's go over some case studies. This is to best apply the kinds of things I've just mentioned. We'll start with a more recent one. The balloons. So I'm starting here because this was the only balloon incident when I started writing the talk. Probably everyone's heard of it by this point, but just in case you haven't, a high altitude balloon that was of Chinese origin originally was spotted and tracked over both the US and Canadian airspace. NORAD's recent change for the filters that they use to track objects has confirmed that this is a super common thing, but it was the first one that actually got spotted by people. Also, before this recent incident, Roswell was probably a balloon, for example. The object was roughly round in shape, as you can see in that image below. It was floated silently and is white, which are all really common UFO sightings, so this could go some way to explaining others. And a fun additional non-UFO related fact, this incident resulted in the first air-to-air kill ever performed by the F-22 fighter jet in US history, as well as, the following balloons. Really keeping them safe out there, boys. So yeah, as I just mentioned there, obviously other incidents have happened since. There were two in Alaska, one in Yukon, which is a territory just east of Alaska, a couple in South America, and there was one in Romania/Moldova, which were probably Russians targeting Ukraine for military purposes. Does anyone honestly think that aliens who are advanced enough for faster than light travel would let their aircraft get shot down, or spacecraft I suppose? I don't think so. It's some sticks and stones technology we have at the moment. The prevalence of social media and pattern-seeking brains that we all have in our lovely noggins there results in fear-mongering over rational explanations. So, now that's out of the way, we can get onto the actual quote-unquote UFOs. The title of the post that I found this on is "The Inverkeithing Sphere in Scotland, allegedly not seen with the naked eye when the image was taken." Does that imply that it's a cloaking device? It's travelling at a significant rate of speed? Well, probably not. Inverkeithing is about 55 kilometers south of where we are at the moment. I picked this because it's pretty close and it's a fun start, So let's look at the image. The texture's abnormal. Normally UFOs are pretty smooth, well, at least reportedly smooth anyway. The sharp shadows in the bottom of the image are similar to the shadows in the object, or at least more similar than the trees in the background, you know. So that implies that the object is pretty close to the camera, so it's got to be kind of small, right? The other thing, though, that you may have noticed if you're keen-eyed is that there is a dog in the bottom left-hand corner of the image. It's cut a long story short, it's probably just a dog's ball in mid-throw. So yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Let's go a little bit more international though, shall we? So this is a TikTok taken outside of the Sapphire Gentlemen's Club in downtown Las Vegas. The Mojave Desert, where Las Vegas is situated, as you'll know if you played Fallout New Vegas, is a pretty popular place for UFO enthusiasts. It's where Roswell happened, it's where Area 51 is located, that kind of thing. So this TikTok video is showing a bunch of lights in the sky above Las Vegas. The lights appear pretty curved. They're not in any visibly symmetrical order. Maybe it's a bunch of UFOs, a bunch of aliens flying above the sky, that kind of thing. Well, I don't think that's the case. As you can see in this diagram here that was helpfully provided to me by Reddit, these lights are probably just a series of uplights on the various hotels in the area. Those red lights are the Las Vegas Hilton, the yellow light strips are from the Wynn and Encore hotels, and the small strip of light is from Trump International, baby. Yeah. So the phenomenon is probably caused by reflective ice crystals formed in the cloud layer during a recent Arctic blast phenomenon that happened in the US over the winter. The reflectivity was probably increased by the relative warmth of the desert, as more ice crystals that are smaller are more reflective than less larger crystals. So maybe this kind of thing isn't something that you would have seen if Las Vegas was situated in Montana, for example. So this one's a little bit more interesting. So here you'll be able to see a video taken from the live feed of the International Space Station. It was taken on approximately the 12th of June 2021. The lights, as you can see moving across the screen right now, slowly move from left to right at a constant rate of speed without deviating from their path. There are, as you can probably notice, other smaller points of lights behind the main lights, which could, in theory, be construed as stars in space. So let's do a little bit of investigating. The camera from the original footage is pointed downwards at Earth. This is confirmed by this similar shot on the left taken on January the 28th, 2023. The stars, therefore, in the original footage are likely dead pixels from a camera overexposed to the elements of space. The theory that UFOs could be objects flying between Earth and the ISS, which is, I might remind you, 417 kilometers above the Earth, is still, in theory, possible, but the likely explanation is that the lights are from fishing vessels, which emit enough light to be seen from the ISS. In particular, they're probably squid fishing ships that operate at night using light sources to attract the squid to the surface of the water. Oh, now this is a really interesting case that I personally did quite a deep dive into myself. This video shows three men hiking up a volcano in Antuco, in Chile. The men, if you could hear the audio, are speaking in Spanish, obviously, confirm that's where they are. As you can see, there's a point of light there, just sort of staying still. The guy in the video says that it could be Goku doing the Genki Dama, which I assume is pretty funny. So I used the information provided by the men in the video to find his exact location on Google Earth. The guys were looking west down into a valley. I confirmed this location using the shape of the mountains and the sort of geographical formations in there. If you can note the small hill at the bottom there, that's the exact same. The mountains on the left look like a single mountain because of Google Earth's full bright lighting and the fact that there isn't any haze. You'll also notice from the original video as well as from this analysis that the light is below the horizon and is therefore emanating either from the valley or in between the camera and the valley itself if it's a floating object. Well, it's probably not a floating object. I took this image from Google Street View. This is a small village, a locality in Chile named Paluca, which is quite near the volcano, as you can see over on the left of the image, that is the volcano that we were talking about earlier. The camera is facing east, as you can tell from the compass in the bottom right-hand corner of the image. And this building over here on the right, it has either an aluminium, a steel, or a tin roof. It's essentially, highly reflective material, right? So what's probably happened is that the light has bounced off of this roof into the camera, which was situated on top of the mountain. But that doesn't really explain the triangular shape that you saw earlier on in the video. Well, that can be explained by the bokeh effect. This is a bokeh. It's caused by the shape of the camera aperture when trying to photograph an out-of-focus light-emitting object. The shape in this case is triangular because the smallest number of blades you can have in a camera's aperture and still work is 3. You can see an example of a 3 sort of bladed bokeh on the right there. But you can get any shape of bokeh depending on the aperture that you have, or if you have like some tape in front of the lens in a specific shape. You can make star-shaped bokehes, you can make everything. It's great. So all of the things I've spoken about up until now have been odd, but perfectly reasonably explainable phenomena. These videos I'm about to show you, though, are not the same as the previous few. Note, I will be playing these videos with the sound off because they're very, very loud. The audio is pretty important for 2 of them, though, as it shows kind of what's going through the aviators' minds at the time, but we're mostly interested in the visuals here. If you really want to know what they're saying, I highly recommend going and finding them yourself. There's actually plenty of like deep dives into this topic elsewhere. I can recommend a couple of videos if you come up to me afterwards. So in 2004, the US Navy Carrier Strike Group, led by the USS Nimitz, spotted targets moving off the coast of Southern California and northern Mexico. A pair of fighter jets, led by Commander David Fravor, approached the targets, identified as dots on the radar, that made erratic movements. The radar system on the USS Princeton, which was part of the strike group, was taken offline and recalibrated because they thought that it was a mistake on the new radar system's part, but the dots only became sharper. Fravor and Commander Alex Dietrich took off and approached a white oval object hovering above a disturbance in the ocean. They described it as looking like a giant tic-tac. One of the jets that came out after Fravor and Dietrich's was equipped with an advanced targeting, forward-looking infrared camera, also known as an APFLIR, and footage was captured, which is what you're looking at now, and named FLIR, F-L-I-R. Highly skilled pilots' testimony and footage rule out some common aerial phenomena like planes, balloons, that kind of thing. At this time, there is no rational explanation supported by all of the available evidence, which means that this is a genuine, unidentified flying object. So this is the first of 2 more recently taken videos that were declassified at the same time as the previous video. This was taken off the coast of Virginia in the United States in the time period approximately 2014 to 2015. We don't know the dates exactly, for obvious reasons. And this was taken by a jet associated with the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. This one is probably the easiest of the 3 to actually identify. So the infrared footage that you're seeing on the screen at the moment was taken in BLK or black mode, which means that hot objects are black. The object appears to be travelling fast, but once the parallax effect is taken into account, as well as the movement of the jet, you can figure out, using on-screen information, that it's travelling at about 40 kilometers an hour. The distance to the object can be determined by other on-screen information. So at this point the video is paused. It's 3.3 nautical miles to the target, as determined by that 3.3 RNG number in the corner there. We're going to use 3.6 for this because that's the bit that I did the maths on. The camera at this point is elevated negative 36 degrees. I'm going to use 33 because when it was 3.6 nautical miles away, it was elevated at about 33 degrees angle. the altitude of the aircraft is 25,010 feet above sea level, and we can use all of that plus a little bit of trigonometry to show that it's approximately 12,000 feet away from the aircraft, and therefore about 13,000 feet from sea level. All the evidence available to us, including the fact that it's a cold object, it's not traveling particularly fast, it's traveling at, high altitude but not like too high, points to this possibly being a seabird. Seabirds have cold external feathers for insulation, so that accounts for the coldness, and they tend to travel quite far out, quite long distances for extended periods of time. It's probably a seabird. So the second video in this series of videos is not quite as clear-cut as the first one. So as you're able to see in this video, there's an object sort of floating a little bit further away. Parallax can be accounted for a little bit, as you can see that the aircraft is banking to the right, so moving around or whatever, but there's no distance to the object, so we don't really know what it is, and also the camera is angled slightly upwards, 2 degrees upwards. You can see there that the object is rotating. This rotation can be accounted for by our old friend artifacting. So the atmosphere has a stabilization mechanism internally, and the camera lens itself has another layer of glass in front of it. That glass can cause diffraction to the lens and eventually to the sensor, which means that when the assembly is rotated to keep the image stable, the sort of lens flare effect that you see around it also moves with it. That, however, doesn't really account for what the object actually is. The well-known video game developer turned debunker Mick West believes that it's the exhaust of a jet, but the pilot, I feel, would probably know if it was that, though, so I'm not entirely convinced by that argument, although I'm still open to it, So, to conclude, yeah, as you can see, interest in UFOs and extraterrestrial life have been on the rise in recent months and years. With the internet, we've got access to tools to explain UFOs as easily explainable terrestrial phenomena, but also we have the same tools to trick ourselves into believing conspiracy theories and stuff. The study of UFO sightings and the search for extraterrestrial life, I feel, can teach us quite a bit about the universe and our place in it. The world is a wonderful, beautiful, strange place, and learning about it and all of the sort of fringe pieces of information like this that we can learn about it can really deepen our understanding and our appreciation for the mysteries of this world and the universe around it. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, obviously this is a video, so you can direct them to me at my Twitter handle at IBRice101, or you can just catch me in person if you ever see me about. Thank you very much.